Well, like many of you, I was surprised to see the State Department come out and directly say not only is Russia involved and supporting the rebels in the Ukraine, in the country of Ukraine, which they have no business in, they're actually supplying and firing. And you're looking at the video right now. Now, this has not been confirmed, but it's believed to be Russian weaponry firing into Ukraine. So they are directly involved in this less than a week or 1 week to the day in which a Russian rebel Russian anti-missile battery took out a passenger jet with many of those remains still lying in that field.
Right. Yesterday, State Department spokesman Marie Harf first made the accusation during the press conference. She said that Moscow is boosting military shipments and pro-Russian separatists there. Pentagon also confirming her account, saying Russia firing artillery for several days now.
That's right. So, you know, the story has been, the narrative has been, you've got Ukraine and they're defending themselves against these pro-Russian rebels. Well, as it turns out, Russia itself is lobbing things into Ukraine. That essentially changes this conflict. It's more of a conventional war. Also, we should point out that the State Department also announced that they have evidence that apparently Russia is sending more multiple rocket launchers into the area to put into the hands of the rebels. Regarding that Malaysia Flight 17 that went down a week ago yesterday, the Organization for Security in Europe reported that they found a bunch of shrapnel-like, almost machine gun-like holes in some of the rubble, which does support the suggestion that some sort of very powerful anti-aircraft missile that only Russia would have brought it down.
Australia is sending troops into the area to secure it because there are bodies laying in the field. There's a piece of fuselage just laying in the woods. It's a total unsecure, total unsecure. The cockpit was cut in half and they got it. So now you look at the fact that they've done absolutely nothing for this. The world has not responded, so Vladimir Putin has been emboldened. Reportedly we're about to send military advisors into Ukraine. I certainly would love to see that. We're studying the possibility of sending advisors while the Russians are sending in hardware.
All of this actually sounds more like conventional war. Has many Americans wondering, will the president act? Has the globe wondering, what will America do? But when asked who has the upper hand in Ukraine, Americans say this: Putin has the upper hand right now over Barack Obama, President Obama, at only 14%, thinking that President Obama has the upper hand when it comes to the situation.
So I thought the sanctions were working. They were beginning to affect the behavior of the Russians. They really seem to be effective. They've been emboldened since the world condemned them verbally and done nothing simply.
Well, it does look as if the European Union finally is realizing, okay, yeah, we get all our gas from Russia, but we're going to go ahead and do something. They're talking about today doing something sanction-wise. Don't hold your breath. Also, don't hold your breath to see the President of the United States do anything, because he's just concluded his 3-day Hollywood fundraisers out in California and the West Coast, and he told his Hollywood pals and people with deep pockets that, you know, the turmoil in the world, yeah, that's one thing, but if you really need to assess the blame those darn Republicans. Here's one of the quotes. He says, quote, obviously people are concerned about some of the turmoil that's taking place around the world, and they look at the Mideast and they see a transition from an old order to a new order, and they're not sure how that's going to happen. And the terrible violence that occurs as a result of the conflict that probably makes people most discouraged is the conflict they see in Washington.
Infuriating to kind of hear that, I think, when most people think, no, Americans actually do care what's going on in the world. It's not just a transition in the Middle East. It's downright murder and killings, an opportunity for terror to take over. Is the president in a state of denial? Is he in a state of deceit? Charles Krauthammer says those comments that the president just made are obscene.
There is something that borders on the obscene. Within a week of the shoot-down of a civilian airliner with 300 people dead, for the president to say that what really disturbs Americans is not what's happening abroad like that massacre, but too much congressional time spent on the IRS scandal, the phony scandal. I mean, when a president actually says that, you wonder, can he believe it? And if he does, is this really something that anyone can give any respect to?
if the president used his time yesterday, for example, to say, I want to take a pause from campaign. This is what's going on overseas. This is why you should care, with his sleeves rolled up and that folksy style. If he started using those communication ability to talk about the need to pay attention over there, then things would change. The president might be in his office looking at polls going, no, it turns out America doesn't care about foreign policy, but it does, and it should, and this is why it matters. If he explains that, rather than continuing to vilify Republicans, I think the whole country would change.
Well, you know what? The president has, he says in Hollywood, people are discouraged by the conflict they see in Washington. Remember back in 2008, that's one of the president's selling points, then a senator. He said, I'm going to change the tone in Washington, D.C. Fast forward today, it looks as if, to many people, he's actually made it worse. One of the problems, though, is you don't see a lot of criticism regarding the president because so many members of the mainstream media helped get him elected. You don't see much criticism on the evening news. And in fact, when you take a look, and these facts were compiled by the Media Research Center, take a look. Since July the 8th, there have been 79 stories, or 169 minutes, regarding the fighting in Gaza, but only 45 seconds of criticism about the administration. Since July the 17th, 3 evening newscasts have aired 96 stories, or 209 minutes, about the jet shoot-down. But you know what? How much criticism of the administration? 10 seconds.
For their lack of response.
Seconds.
And not only is the administration not doing anything, they're talking. Evidently, the president talks to Vladimir Putin all the time. Nothing happens. In fact, things get worse. But there's no plan going forward. You would think you can't complete a story without saying, what's America doing now? As Michael Hayden told Megyn last night, it's the first time in his lifetime that he's ever seen America take a back seat in so many places.
Right, and if you are not involved, if you are not there, something else will step in to things, and forces can't occupy the same place at the same time. When good steps out, evil will step in. We're seeing that across the globe. You
know what? Maybe if they built a really nice golf course in Ukraine, or they had a big fundraiser, maybe then he would go over there and then talk about it.
Perhaps.
Maybe.